But yeah, great. So welcome everybody. Welcome Kat and Niki. And looking forward to the evening. Thank you.
Thanks, Claire.
Kia ora whānau, kanu te hei koa kei hui hui nei tātou, hei tautoko nui ki tēnei whare, te whare puka puka o Titirangi, and it's just my absolute pleasure to have everybody here. Thanks so much for coming. I have an amazing interlocutor tonight, the incredible Niki Harre, who's been a real inspiration for me over quite a lot of years now. We mainly know each other through our professional connections, our work professional connections and Sustainable Business Network. And Niki's been one of those amazing people who, when I've been working on something around green marketing, has often said, yes, but what about? And have you thought about this? And I love that challenger brain. So someone you feel totally safe with, who challenges you. And so when I was thinking who could do a, as she's described it, a Kim Hill on me this evening. Over to Niki.
Okay, thank you, Katherine, for inviting me. I absolutely enjoyed this wonderful book, which I know you will all go home and stay up till midnight reading tonight. Just so many different themes going through it, and so it's a real privilege to be able to discuss it with you this evening. And one thing we meant to say too is, obviously I've got a list of questions here, but if you feel anything that you want to say bounces off what we're discussing, please do feel free to indicate that you'd like to have a word. So, this book features Ruby, as you might guess from the title, and it actually begins with Ruby winning a Grammy and making a speech. And this, I'm not giving anything away to say that this speech is the beginning of where the plot starts and really takes off from there. So just to start us off, I was hoping you could read that piece, starting on page 10, to give you all a bit of a feel for how the book, the style and the texture of the book.
I'd love to, thank you. As I listened to Brittany get her Lifetime Achievement Award, and thank God for the 20th time, my irritation spawned the evil idea. It's the kind I dream up all the time, but usually stitch into songs or throw away. It was an impulse, a splatter of rebellion. And of course, I had the Carnival Owls not won that night, it would have come to nothing. But we did win. Best song for Peanut Heart. So I find myself on stage with the power of the mic, wearing vintage McQueen and wrestling boots, still clutching my knitting. I should have just said thank you like everybody else, but the hit of winning hadn't landed yet. I was still snarled and cocky and delusional, so somewhere between the shock of hearing my name over the PA and reaching the stage, I decided to do what Grandad had always told me and spoke my mind. I want to thank my mum and my music teachers and my band, I said. I'm not going to thank any god tonight because I don't believe in any. I do believe in the splendour of our tiny planet, and if we all spent less time praying or shopping and more time looking out for it, we might actually have a future. I wasn't any more pissed off and wasted than most of the 27-year-olds mouthing off around the world that weekend, except I had the mic and the global feed to millions. Looking back, it was just a small way to start, just words. But words have always had power, especially when you say the unexpected.
Thank you for that. Just to set it up a little bit further, I'm also going to ask Katherine to read another little passage, which comes on 46. And this is what interested me a lot about this book, is that that speech becomes the moment that the whole book takes off. But obviously, Ruby is a rock star, as you get it. She just won a Grammy for Best Song with her group. So she's been writing lyrics for a long time and been trying, to some extent, to get across her message in these lyrics. But she's frustrated with that. So if you could just read that passage on page 46.
For years, all I'd needed was music, to make it and have it heard. I mean really heard, so you could see you'd touched your finger to someone's heart by the light in their eyes or the escape in their face as they listened, head back, fist in the air. But the world is full of forgotten music and faded stars. It's all very well inspiring fans to oblivion with 3-minute rock wonders, But I wasn't sure I could just keep strumming blithely while Rome and the rest of our pretty planet burned. I've tried doing save the world stuff in my lyrics. I can't help it. It matters to me, so it leaks into my songs. People sing along to them while they drive their SUVs, eating a Big Mac. Maybe 1 in 10,000 might follow the emotional breadcrumbs in the music and understand what you're trying to say. But most people don't even get the words right in the 2 lines of lyrics they think they know.
I love that bit because I'm one of those people that's always, singing really loudly to songs, and then comes a dreadful moment where I actually see the lyrics written down and realise that they didn't make sense at all. So why did you make Ruby a rock star? You musician or?
Possibly a frustrated one. No, yeah. My mum and my sister have the musical genes in our family, and so I grew up with music in my house and my mum singing arias, doing the washing up, and music's been really, really important to me since I sort of discovered rock and indie sort of 15, 16, and that became a really formative part of my life and remains to be it. And I'm lucky enough to have a lot of musicians of different types in my life, so I'm often involved with live music and listening to it. And so that to me in terms was the natural place to go when I knew this character needed fame. So one of the things I was really interested in exploring in this book is what fame means today and how much potential power that has and how infrequently it's wielded. And so one of the what ifs that underpins the novel is the idea of what if somebody who had real fame and real reach and the ability to communicate actually did something useful with it. What might happen then?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think if with that in mind, a rock star is the choice. I mean, just the other day my son was saying, why do people study poetry? Not that there's anything wrong with poetry, but he said we should be studying, the lyrics of music, because that's what is the more general sort of cultural ethos these days. So I can see why a rock star is. And so you were getting into fame, and you really lived Ruby in this book. It's written in the first person, and we all get to know and identify with Ruby really strongly. So for you being that close to it, what's it like sort of being in the head of fame? Is it a pleasant place to be?
It's really interesting because it's that whole thing about you are in the character's head when you're writing it, but they have such a distinct identity of their own right anyway, so there's a kind of a natural separation. And I guess one of the things that helped with it is the fact that there's some people very dear to me in my life who have gone from not being famous to being household names in the time I've known them. So Matidia Tude, who very kindly gave me a quote in the back of the book, being probably the most the most compelling one of those. So Met and I used to hang out and do crazy stuff, and then she became an MP, and then she became co-leader, and now it's hard to go on Facebook when she's not there, and she's on the news all the time. And how we can hang on to our very ordinary humanity while there is this maelstrom of stuff going on around us. But the challenges that that presents. So yeah, that was one of the real things that I wanted to look at, and how it actually can be in the sort of times that we're in now. That kind of global fame and reach can be our Facebook post away. For people who happen to put something up that goes viral, like the Chewbacca mask lady. The people who've seen that, she does our crazy YouTube video about what she bought in the shops because it made her laugh, and several million views later, and she's on chat shows in the US. So it's like that speed of transition is, for those of you who haven't seen it, you'll have to look it up. I've got half the room nodding and half the room going, what?
So what you seem to be saying is perhaps we all have a public and a private persona to a degree, and in someone that's famous, that's really exacerbated. Because Ruby certainly has a really strong private life. She has something very ordinary about her relationship with her mother, and so that fame is somewhat distant from her.
Yeah, so we don't lose who we are, but there are extra pressures on it. And I think one of the things that is really interesting and challenging for all of us, actually, like, even if we've got 50 Facebook friends, is what do we share and what don't we? So and where do we draw those lines? And what are the impact on other people from seeing what we choose to share or not? So there's one particular aspect in the book where Ruby makes a decision to go public with something that in many ways is the last thing she wants to do. And so that tension that exists around that public-private is definitely one of the things that I've tried to explore.
Yeah, no. I think that's a really interesting point, because one of my later questions, but I'll jump onto it now, is around shame. I think there's a lot in this book about shame, and it's the difficulty with shame is that its very nature is that you don't go around screaming, "I'm ashamed." Of all the emotions, it's the one that's the most kind of private. So what do you think it did cost Ruby to go public with something that we might think of as shameful?
I think that I'm just being a little bit careful about spoilers with this. Just indulge me while I pause for thought for a change. I know it doesn't often happen. For those of you who know me, thanks, Jackie. I don't actually think through speaking.
Are you recording that?
Yeah, it's actually going out live on Facebook. So I think that whole thing about, so shame is something we feel, but it's a result, I think, of external judgment that we expect will be put on us. So if we can overcome that and go, well, this is it anyway, that at that point becomes hugely powerful because we've reclaimed it. So that's probably all I'm going to say about it without getting into spoilers. But it's about that power, and particularly for us as women in society. Kara Cockerell! Thanks! Hi, Becca! Becca Mikada, you come and sit at the front with me because the seat's here. We're having a natural hilarity pause because I was just saying...
The rooster crowed just when we were talking about feminine
exactly.
issues.
So the rooster had to have his mansplaining, I think, from the car park. So it is that whole thing about power and about what we let people externally wrap around us and when we choose to bust out of that or not, as the case might be.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good point, because shame is it is the thing that you fear people seeing, and if society greets it differently, then that fear's gone. It's really interesting, that whole issue in here, and I think it's a very important emotion to deal with. So one of the things I also loved in the book, and I was wondering if it was intentional, was was the play with gender roles. So this Ruby, right, who's a rock star, and another key character, and this isn't a spoiler because he's introduced pretty early on, is Michael. And what I love about this book is, all those TV shows in which there's this kind of male genius who's, difficult but brilliant. And then there's always a woman running around organising him, and she's a bit irritating, by that. But we all know she's essential to actually make his genius come to anything. And in the book, I think this is reversed. I don't know if I'm making too many assumptions, but it feels like Ruby's a sort of troubled genius and Michael's organising it. Would you like to talk a bit about that?
Yeah, I will. It was interesting because I hadn't actually thought about that as one of the gender shifts that I had. There's some of them I did quite deliberately, and they'll make just the cockerel coming in. So some of them I was kind of like, some of the smaller characters. I hadn't done it deliberately with Michael. I think it's probably because I'm probably, although I have clients in the room, but really, that I'm actually not one of the world's most organised people. It's not my top skill. I can do it, but generally I'm surrounded in my work life and in my home life, and in the house I grew up in, by blokes are the ones who get you to places on time and who ensure that you have what you need to have when you get there. Kia ora, darling. Hi, Dad. And so it was quite natural for me that I guess. So that was one time where I hadn't kind of deliberately mixed it up. There are some times when I did mix it up a bit.
Well, that's very interesting. So this is obviously just our different sort of perceptions on
But
gender
I
roles.
think it also reflects the fact that still a lot of our film and a lot of our TV, although I have to say TV is increasingly good for strong female characters who do all sorts of things. But movies and a lot of the books that are the most celebrated books still are written by men. And there are then those assumptions that creep in. So I think it's in real life. we have lots of powerful and successful women and lots of men who are really good at organising it, but that doesn't necessarily get reflected in popular culture or in the media. And sometimes, you know, as women, we are more reticent. Like, you know, I know of conferences where women are asked to speak and they'll say, oh no, someone else can do it, or, you know, not get the chances. And so there is definitely a need to reassert what reality is often more often like, because if we don't see it, we can't be it.
Yeah. I mean, it reminded me of the Hunger Games, which is, you know, one of my favourite book series, cultural phenomena, because that also does that juxtaposition of genders just really beautifully. Now, what you said earlier, of course, begs the question of would you like to reveal one of your conscious gender plays in the book?
Oh, so and so I mean, there's a scene that I kind of just had some fun with where there's a derelict building which makes an appearance, and the builder who comes in and sucks their teeth and looks at how dodgy the stairs are is a woman that runs a building firm. So there are some places like that where the obvious choice would have just, because most building firms are run by blokes still, but it's kind of fun to have one that isn't, and there are plenty that aren't. So it's just those are the kind of places where it was nice to do something a bit different.
I mean, I think the book is full of those of surprises and characters, and lots of the secondary characters have, you know, quick depth, if you like. You know,
Thank you.
Yeah. So I mean, you probably heard the knitting, you know, right at the very beginning, and is it revealing too much? It probably is, to say what the core message becomes in terms of.
Oh yeah, we want them to buy it and read it.
I know. It's really tricky to work out. Okay, maybe I won't go there, but there's a strong plea, and it comes through lots and lots of times, to kind of make your own stuff, to make do and to make your own stuff. Is that part of your, you know, your personality, your heritage?
Well, I mean, I think for, you know, a lot of us here who are kind of my age, like our parents were involved in kind of making stuff. Like my mum would definitely not describe herself as a great seamstress, but she did make clothes for us when we were kids, and that was just kind of normal, and even more so for our grandparents' generations. And I think that, you know, there's a lot of pleasure to be had from making something out of not a lot. So when I was a kid, I was pretty terrible because I would much sooner been reading a book. Is the reality. You know, I'd start to sing, and then as soon as someone's eye was turned, I'd sneak off and get back to my book. But I did, you know, manage to get my own knitting from being a sort of a lopsided triangle that was pretending to be a square into actually being able to make a few nice pairs of gloves. And so that tactile pleasure of creating something is something that, you know, was really lovely to be able to bring to life and to write about. And I think it's really true for human nature that there is a real drive for us to make and create, and there's a massive resurgence going on globally in terms of craft and the craft movement, and I think it's not dissimilar, I think, from that urge to grow stuff and to cultivate food and to garden, and the sort of that urge to nurture and foster is, I think, a very human one, which we don't get by opening a plastic packet of something we use 3 times and throw away. You know? So that is one of the kind of things that's juxtaposed in the book.
Did you hear Kim Hill interview Debbie Stoller?
No.
Yeah, I don't know how many of you know.
That's good,
It's a fantastic interview. I mean, Debbie Stoller being a Stitch and Bitch writer and a feminist, and just really talking. She gave an example of where her mother had made her a dress, and her aunt said, "Can you make one for my daughter?" And she said, "Did they realise how long that took and how much care went into that, and you know, the appreciation that's needed for these?" And actually connected to that in the book. And I wondered if you felt a bit nervous about doing this, so it's probably a bit mean of me to bring it out, but you're going to read it anyway. You had a little bit of a dig at sort of eco-organic. You know, buying lots of eco-organic stuff isn't a revolution, folks. And you know, you're part of this, you're connected to the Sustainable Business Network, so do you want to talk us through that a bit?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know, with my business Good Sense, which is a marketing business, we talk on, you know, one of the prominent web pages about how the answer to the planet is actually that we need less stuff. You know, whether it's fair trade stuff sourced from an amazing collective of knitters in the Himalayas or not, we generally need less stuff in the world, especially less stuff that has a short lifespan and disposable. So if we are going to have stuff, it needs to be stuff that is treasured and precious and passed on, and whose value and whose true cost is really understood. So yeah, it's and you know, we all buy stuff. We're all kind of locked into that. So that idea that we're somehow stuck in an economy that is based on us buying things that largely will get thrown away is something I'm really, really interested in throughout my Green Party volunteering, throughout my paid mahi, and through my art.
Yeah. So were you thinking of any products or companies in particular when you sort of made that claim about eco-organic isn't the revolution? She didn't quite say it like that.
I mean, you know, particularly because I work and teach in this space, my world is quite full of it. So you know, there's and often being run by really fantastic, well-meaning people who are trying to make their sector a bit better than their sector was before. You know, where then there's examples from New Zealand, examples from the UK where the novel's set. So I think that kind of point is that we've got so disconnected from what a economy in a society that actually really is self-sustaining would look like, that in this transition period some of those sustainable business models, they're only incremental improvements, they're not the real change we need. So it starts to open up some of that.
Yeah, because I mean the change that you're proposing is pretty radical. It does involve a rethinking, you know, of who we are and what our identities are and what we stand for.
Well, I mean, I think, you know, a lot of us in this room, that's the reality that we are. You know, when we watch the TV and despair at what John Key said tonight, or when we sign a Greenpeace petition, we're all saying that this world has to change. We're on a hiding to nothing fast. There was a great cartoon, I can't remember the cartoonist, so someone might help me out, but I just saw in the last day or two with, you know, the flotilla of ships, which is the global economy on the cusp of going over the waterfall, and there's a young woman in a rowboat kind of some way back kind of going, we're going the wrong way, and they're all going, well, we've got no choice, we've got to do this, blah blah, as they head towards the waterfall. You know, and it's that visual metaphor, well, what we've got right now isn't working. So, you know.
Yeah, it's sort of, I mean, it's kind of mind-boggling, isn't it, how much we know about what is wrong with where we're headed, and yet, you know, the turning around, the Titanic, just seems like an impossibility. And I think there's definitely optimism in this book that it is possible by reaching into people's hearts, by being authentic, by, you know, saying what you need to say.
And by everybody taking responsibility for them. I mean, so I've, you know, explored that through one character who has particular opportunities, but the resonance that has applies to lots of other people in the book as well. So, you know, it's not something that a hero can do for us. We all need to be heroes.
Yeah, that's right. We are the system ultimately. So I think it's time for another reading.
Oh,
yes. And this sort of dovetails with what we've just been talking about, which is, you know, what is it that inspires people to take action? What is it that gets us moving from that, you know, there's the edge and plummet straight over into us, you know, taking this reversal. So please read page 56, some reflections on what type of catalyst is it?
yeah. Well, so Niki mentioned the character Michael earlier, and so this is a section in the book where Ruby and Michael are talking. They've met previously, and they're kind of exploring what might happen next in the book and between their relationship. So as Ruby says, we talked about how the organisations Michael had worked for had all used climate calculations, percentages and acronyms to fight for change and failed. People can't be brave or make sacrifices for statistics, and drowning animals or children just makes them sad. If we want people to act, they have to feel powerful, Ruby, said Michael. They have to be inspired. That's what your speech did. It jolted them awake. Hell, it jolted me awake. I'd started to give up. I was even looking at call centre jobs. All those years of petitions and protests, of marches and blockades, they got us nowhere. I've been campaigning since I was 9 years old, and they fucked up the universities. For what? I thought about the sudden firestorm of media and the residual heat that still burned online. and smouldered in the queue of interview requests. It seemed strange saying none of this plastic, fantastic wonderland that we've wrapped over the world would be here if it wasn't for nature, could resonate like it had. It was such a basic truth, but sometimes songs surprise you too. Michael's taut face twitched like he'd made a decision. I laid in bed all morning, he said, skipped work and not even rung in sick, because I couldn't face another day of beating my head against a colossal brick wall of apathy and corruption. Then the video of your speech popped up online. You reminded me we can tap into something bigger. People lived in awe of nature for thousands of years, all around the world. We can use that. It's why I quit the foundation and came to find you.
So does nature inspire you?
Oh, yeah! Totally, yeah, and I've just, kia ora Aotearoa for having me where I can be immersed in it and run a business and live in this amazing Tāmaki Makaurau city we have, we're very blessed. But I mean, growing up, my father's a first generation computer programmer, a scientist, an engineer, and so I remember really vividly sitting on the vinyl seat of the back of the Marina estate, gosh, no, it would have been an earlier car, whatever car, 70s car we were in at the time, we had mustard coloured seats, and him explaining to me that the world was made up of little electrical charges called molecules, and what I was sitting on wasn't actually a thing at all, it was all these electrical charges coming together, and I would have been about 7, I think, and it just changed my view of the world forever, and I was like, wow, and I haven't really stopped going wow since, and my mum, passionate about nature and teaching me respect for when we'd pick the leaves off the bush in the garden to feed to the stick insects or whatever crazy creature we were keeping at the time, to say please and thank you, and to acknowledge that you were depriving a living organism of a resource that it needed to grow and to flourish. And so that belief system, I guess, is what my worldview is founded on. So, so drawing on that was really strong. And that, when you're writing, you're creating characters, but one of the threads I drew on quite directly out of my own life is that, just that having that appreciation, because it's something that everyone's fortunate enough to get.
Yeah, and it's interesting because there's a bit of an anti-God, or at least an anti-established religion thread in this, which we sort of might get onto a bit more, but would you say that connection for you is spiritual? Is that a word you'd apply for it?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm not very, I'm not very kind of good, particularly at things that are organised and systemised. So I think that what's often happened is that spirituality has sort of been sandwiched into the idea that it has to sit within an organised religious framework. But that a lot of the things from a Te Reo Māori perspective, the concept of wairua, that things that flow through us, and that concept, absolutely, from a shadow of a doubt, is that connection and that being very grounded and being really refreshed by nature around us. And being mindful it's happening to us, because all the scientific evidence, all the psychological evidence, all the health evidence is that we heal and we feel better and we are happier when we're immersed in nature. Even if we have a plant in the office, or plant in the library, there's a couple here today, which is great, and plenty outside the window, that we are happier and more productive, we get less sick, so that is really true at a mind, body and spirit level, I think, for a lot of us. We just don't necessarily get the opportunity to know or understand that.
And of course Ruby's in a very urban, she has a very urban life, doesn't she? Involved getting up late, being a rock star, so she performs at night and is maybe not strongly in touch with that actually, except through her mother, who again you meet early in the book.
And Leeds as a local, it's set in Leeds, where some of you'll know I met Tony and we lived for 9 years before we emigrated here, and it's a city in the north where there's a lot of nature in the city. There's great parks. There's a lot of people still have gardens and garden, and you're not very far from getting into some really wild countryside. You take a bus and catch the bus very easily and be up in the Yorkshire Dales, or not very much further into the Lake District where Ruby does go in the book. And so that fact that it is a city with all of that urban vibrancy, but it's also a city where nature is very present, was kind of part of why I wanted that as the location. Where it made sense.
And it's something we can identify with, because it is set in a city where most of us are located, and so the action's there. It's not about going off into the hills and being a essentially different from who we are.
Yeah, and I think that's really important from a change we want to make perspective. Like there are some smashing groups of people who've created alternative communities that live in lovely areas in the wilderness, and that is its own journey. But we're not gonna get all of our people into a situation where they can live a good and happy and healthy life where we're not trashing the planet by going off and forming alternative lifestyle, ideal enclaves. Like that's not gonna fix it. We need to work out how we can do it in our cities of 1 million people, because that's where a lot of us are, and how we can grow food in cities and how we can make those things work. So I guess to me it's like, so what I want to do is just set the novel in what is reality. It's set 5 years in the future to give me a little bit of creative wiggle room and have some fun with that. But to me, it's really was just about writing what now is actually about, even if we're not necessarily seeing it reflected in our media very much.
So the big religion comes in for a little bit of critique, and corporations come in for a bit of critique, and there's a bit of a linking of these two as well. Do you think they're in cohort?
Oh, I couldn't possibly comment. I think that, again, the book is really kind of about power, and Ruby as a character has his own little vortex of power, I guess, that kind of bashes against what some of the existing power structures are. And a lot of those existing power structures, they're not wanting to give up on it easy in our real world or in Leeds in 2021. So yeah, that's this.
But it's all personal too, isn't it? Like healthy people who are well loved and well nurtured, use these institutions kind of properly, if you like. It's when there's also shameful stories going on in the background, which we're talking very abstractly here. Yeah, not to spoil the plot. So I'd love to hear a little bit about your writing process. I'm sure quite a lot of people here are writers themselves, or committed to some other big creative project. Did you get up at 5 a.m. and get to the keyboard?
5 I find tricky. We do several 5 a.m. households. 5 a.m. starts in a household a week, because Tony works in tourism, and sometimes that's what it requires. So on those mornings, their 5 o'clock starts. I generally will do more of a 6 by nature, and my writing time is my first thing in the morning. Time is when I'm at my best. It's when I think my brain's sharpest, but also where all the clutter and noise of the day hasn't had a chance to leak in. So not going on email, not going on social media the very first thing when I'm writing, not doing that. But also, like at the very beginning, when I'm incubating an idea or the ideas are kicking around, it's not even that structured. So it's lots of bits of paper with ideas on them, or messages to myself that I really, or even a message on my phone to myself. Waking up at 4 in the morning with a pen next to the bed and just scribbling a page down, because that's kind of when the idea comes. So there's quite a organic, I guess, and quite piecemeal process. And I deliberately at that stage I'm not worried about trying to write a story, because it's kind of finding and sensing my way into what ideas might be that might become the story. And then there's a point where I go, okay, there's something happening here. There's some, there's a voice that's starting to emerge, or some key actions that are starting to thread themselves together. So at that point, I start writing more seriously. And the first thing is to do a whole big sort out of what I think maybe yesterday we're going to talk about those scraps that you end up with. Those little scraps that may be nothing, and a whole load of them go in the recycling at that point, or they go away for something else another day. And then some of them come together as being the kernels of what will become a story. And that point is, I guess, where I have to put my logical brain in and go, so what is the story that's here? What are the stages? What might the story arc be? And I do at that point start to do some quite careful kind of plotting and sort of looking at a big picture, and then start to actually do the writing. So it's kind of taking what might be a fragment or a sentence here and writing that into something bigger. And then you end up with a whole chunk of those that don't make sense anymore, so you have to recut them. And by that stage you're starting to get into editing. So there's a point around going, what is the story that I want to tell? And then that whole editing piece comes, what is the story that someone will actually want to read? Because, it's like, it's got to be a delight on the page or on the Kindle, because otherwise people aren't going to persist with it. So that's the bit where, you you're cutting out, you're getting ruthless, you're really structuring things so that you want to read it.
I mean, with a nice, a dual play going on, again, without giving away too much, but you do realise pretty soon that there's two stories going on simultaneously in the book. So are you saying when you started with that, you didn't even necessarily have a novel in mind?
I think, I mean, I love writing novels. I love the left brain, right brain tension of it. The fact that you've got enough space to play with big creative ideas, sometimes too big, big creative ideas, but you've also got that kind of, that need to create quite a disciplined structure. So I love that two coming together. It makes my brain fire and work in ways nothing else does. Actually, I adore it. I love it. So the last quite a long time when I've been writing now, what I've been wanting to be writing is things that are going to become novels. It's not to say there won't be shorter things that happen, but that when I'm looking for what am I going to write next, I'm looking for what's the next novel going to be. But I don't necessarily know what trajectory or that's going to take, kind of at all. And I do, I know writers who they've pretty much plotted out in their head before they start writing, and that I fall for. But I just, I need the processor and the bits of paper and the tools.
So have you got a little stack waiting for the next novel?
Yep. There's a stack growing at the moment actually. It's quite, and off his face, it's nice. And it's actually quite good because it fits in quite well with doing book promotional stuff, which has its own, I'm loving. It's my new favourite thing is talking about writing and signing books, but there's also writing to be done. So.
And again, just so from the moment, so I've got, we've got all our ideas laid out now.
Yeah.
And how long did it take from that until it's been kind of finished?
Yeah. So the fragments were kind of accumulating about 5 years ago, but they were pretty kind of ruthless. Like Ruby as a character was starting to emerge, and this kind of idea about using fame and what if. But I hadn't got a location, and I love writing about places. Like the places tend to inform a lot of my writing. So I hadn't found a location. I went back for one of our trips up to visit families who are all still in the UK, and I went back and go to Leeds often because we've got really close friends there, and the place just clicked. And I was like, how exciting, I could make it in Leeds. And it was really great, that trip. I just ran around the city with my phone taking photographs and really looking at the place in a way I hadn't done in quite a long time, really, maybe apart from when I first moved there. And of course I had history to draw on as well, so that was really nice. So at that point when the kind of place comes together, it starts to get a sort of a sense that something's happening. And then the structure bit is, okay, you kind of got a character in a place and this stuff that happens, and so you're finding your way through the plot and how the plot shapes to give a narrative momentum that's going to work.
So it was kind of a 5-year process, basically.
With a big gap to launch that green marketing online course. So
Okay.
I took like a year. So there was probably that sort of year 5 to year 4, there was probably quite a lot of more building fragments and ideas and doing some research and thinking about it, but quite, not desperately disciplined. And then I realised that I actually wasn't making progress with this other work project, which is to put together an online course for marketers in how to get their heads around all this stuff we've been talking about, which is a bit of a challenge. And I wasn't making progress on either of them. I had these 2 projects, both which involved a lot of writing, and I just wasn't going anywhere with either of them. So I parked the novel. I just took a year off, best part of a year off writing altogether, which wasn't easy to do, but it meant that I could actually get done what I needed to get done. And that was quite an important lesson, just not try and do everything all at once. And I got the course done and out there and being piloted, and then I promised my little sis Sarah that I would give her a first version of the manuscript to read by her birthday. So I did have to burn a couple of all-nighters to get that done, but I did get it done in time for her to read it. So.
Yeah, it's interesting because I was just listening to a podcast about the writing process, and I know how terrifying it is to leave something unfinished with the assumption you'll get back to it. It's sort of like not training for a marathon that's approaching. It's that awful feeling, will I ever connect to this? But at the same time, this podcast was about the necessity of doing that. And did you find going back to it that you could sort of plough through in a way that...
It's actually great, and so the whole thing actually was really good because it taught me the power of just setting it aside. and actually going off and doing other stuff for 3 months, 6 months, 9 months. That's absolutely fine. It's not going anywhere. You're just going to get more objective and more informed, and there's more ideas are going to come. So, you know, it's yeah. But kind of having said that, it's I think the thing that a lot of I definitely have to wrestle with, and I've heard other writers talk about it, is that when you're away from it for too long, like if I'm not writing at all, that's not great, because I lose my nerve quite quickly. You know, you lose your sense that what you're putting down is important, that anyone would want to read it, or I do, I should say. And so and the longer I'm away from writing, the more I get twitchy about that. So I've learned to not let it go too long. But you know, it's one of the nice things about actually publishing a book is I've kind of like got a clear milestone achievement, and people are really reading it and enjoying it and giving me good feedback. So that's really good. I feel for, you know, it won't be so easy to lose my nerve again. But I love writing.
You will, because I think, you know, I think this is such an interesting issue, the losing the nerve. You know, because I'm running a book at the moment, and this morning, you know, my husband Keith was at home, and I was at home as well, trying to get big chunks of writing in for the summer semester break. And because he was at home, he kept coming into the room that I was in to get something out of the filing cabinet or whatever. And every time he did that, I felt ridiculous. It was weird, because it was there I was in my little magic bubble, and I do exactly what you do. Get up in the morning, make a coffee, and I do not look at email if I'm trying to write, and I can retain the magic. And then when somebody walks in, it's like bursting a bubble. It's like, oh my God, this is the most absurd, you know, pile of stuff I'm putting out here. And somehow that presence of somebody just makes you feel. So I think even if you do feel that, I think it's endemic. I mean, I don't know if other writers don't feel that.
Yeah, no, I think it's common.
But there's something, because you're creating this magical world, and it's all a bit of an illusion, and it's one step away from absurdity all the time.
Yeah, it is. And there is definitely a whole thing with it as well, where it kind of needs to be free to be absurd. While you're in that creative process, you know, it's kind of like you wouldn't want someone to be reading it while it's in that state. Any more than if you're halfway through cooking a meal, you don't really want someone to be eating it at some stages where all the ingredients aren't in and they're not all crafted, you know. It's kind of like it needs to be ready. And so I guess what happens when you get that brought out of it is that you're confronted with the unready mess that's in that half-cooked state. And that's not, you know, appetizing, and so it kind of makes you cringe, and then throws up all those. But there's also those real build-outs, like, you know, you have to really want to write to craft the time to make it happen, you know, and it's, you know, we fill our lives up with busyness, and so to make that time and to regard the time you put into that as more important than catching up with a friend you love for a glass of wine, which sometimes can be the case, or more important than paying attention to something that's been languishing in your inbox for 2 weeks and really is now overdue. So you've kind of got to prioritise it, and that I think takes a degree of ego about your writing, and so you've got all that kind of tension between the negative critical self-voice and the need to assert your right to spend the time, your need to spend the time doing the writing. So
Yeah.
Can I chip in here? This is an interesting conversation that I did recently, this course with Sept, who's an online, he's a marketing expert. And he recommended, part of that course is about shipping your work. So every day you need to ship something or another. And by shipping he means publish something that's publicly available for other people, even if it's a tweet or a short blog or something like that. And one of the books that he sent us all for this online course is called The War of Art, and it's about the resistance by Stephen Pressfield. So I think it's quite a feeling that everybody fears. I'm afraid to put it out there in case somebody critiques it, but the whole thing is about somebody might critique it, but 9 people might think, God, this is really good stuff. And so it's a really good discipline to get in your mindset about this. I've got to ship something, I've got to ship something, I've got to ship something.
it's a really nice point, and there's that whole flash fiction trend at the moment, which I think is really good for writers. My dear friend Iona Rinto, who also gave me a quote for the back of the book, is a great writer. She's been writing a lot of flash fiction, but she hasn't got a big piece that she wants out there at the moment. So the shorter the flash fiction, often published online, short pieces, they're really great for that kind of keeping you out there. And I did do a lot of short stories that I would put out quite regularly when I was first becoming really serious as a writer, and and they were really important. And I have, randomly written poems and stuck them on Facebook, but for me, I think I want the time and the space of being immersed in a big thing, and to then, and it was really exciting to put it together and end up with a thing, and end up with a download thing, and that people can actually have and hold and touch. And one of the most magical moments for me, actually, with the whole thing is, because it was all a bit last minute, which I won't go into, but it meant that my support crew up in the UK, who were looking at the printed copies up there, had both seen proof copies. We'd given it the thumbs up. It's print on demand, so it's not like I had to print 1,000, have them sitting anywhere. But they'd gone, yeah, it's ready for release. And my copy was being printed in Australia and coming to me, so I hadn't actually seen it. But I mean, I've been living and breathing the cover for a couple of months at that stage, with beautiful artwork by Keely O'Shaughnessy, who's an Auckland-based cover designer. So I knew what the outside looked like, and my proof copy arrived in the mail, and I had a crazy busy deadline day for work, and I'm like, I can't look at it because I'll get distracted. I'm just going to get to 5 o'clock, then I'm going to open it up, and I know it's okay because it's all been checked and I've seen copies. And so I, finished, made a cup of tea, and opened the package up, and it looked great, and everyone was right. It did feel, it felt good. It's got a nice varnish on it that they've done a nice job with. And then I opened it up, and inside were all my words that I'd written. My words, what I'd written in a book. And it was just that, as someone who's adored books since before I knew what they said in them, it was incredible. Yeah, incredible moment. So there's going to be more.
Right.
Because I love it. Everybody else does.
How many words did you end up writing?
So it's about 76,000, which is a little bit short from a novel point of view, but it's laid out nice, so you don't know.
Okay, that's interesting. No, it doesn't. It doesn't seem like. It doesn't seem like a saga.
No.
But it doesn't seem short, and it doesn't seem too short.
It doesn't read short.
No, it doesn't. It is
It's quite a lot to read when
very,
you're trying to
very
proofread it. And thank you to my people here. There's some support crew here tonight.
Someone write it.
Yeah.
Hi, Katherine. I've just been listening to what you've said, and it's almost like, to me, what it sounds like is that you've been through this whole pregnancy and you developed this child that, like a cesarean, was opened out of a package that came from Australia. And what's it like now to actually have it sitting out in the public domain? Do you feel that this is your baby, that this is a part of you, and now it's just out here for everyone to look at? What's this part of it like?
Cool, Kira. Quick couple of big questions. We've never been brave enough to have actual babies of our own, but I do have very many dear babies in our lives, and but I think that process of creating something and then releasing it into the world, it's a useful analogy, and to begin with, it was really nerve-wracking, but I'm getting really good feedback from it, and I'm loving the fact that I wrote a whole bunch of words that mean something to people, and that people are finding entertaining and challenging and absorbing, and that they're happily spending the best part of a day spread over however many weeks reading the thing, and then feeling excited they have. So to create something that has an impact is a phenomenal feeling, and I'm loving it. I'd often felt that there was a bit of a tension between my paid Mahi, running a marketing business, and between my writing, and that they were kind of in competition. And one of the lovely things about publishing has been that I've actually learned that they just feed each other really well. If I didn't have my paid work, I wouldn't be out meeting amazing and inspiring people in the same way, and learning a lot of skills, like being able to sit in front of a room of people and answer hard questions. Is something that I've been doing for years and years and years for work, and coordinating design work and formatting documents is something I've been doing for years for work. Uploading stuff to various complicated online websites, thing I've been doing for years. So there were a load of those skills that came together in that process. So it's been really nice to go, they actually just feed each other, they're not in competition. And so I'm loving the process of people honouring me and the book with their time to read it, but also to want to come and engage with it and share posts about it and post reviews about it. And I love the catalyst for what it's become. And there's definitely a point where once it's out there and people are engaging with it, there's a degree of separation, like that's off, it's its own thing, and people are reacting to it as its own entity. So yeah, that's good. And it should be often out there now, and long may it stay out there, and on to the next ones. Cool, thank
So
you.
this is a good point to mention for those of you who are savvy, or not even those of you who are that savvy with the internet, to do reviews. That I think there are instructions in here.
Shameless self-promotion.
No, it's critical. And I think it says somewhere in here, or it does, to post a review on Goodreads and Amazon. It's a really good thing too. I've got to get around
Thank
to doing
you.
that one, so-
Yeah, it really helps, because
Yeah.
you're expecting complete strangers who've never heard of you to buy your book, and if they can see a few other people go, yeah, it's good, and I like this about it, I like that about it, it really helps to kind of get, I mean, complete strangers are buying it, but it would be nice for more of them too.
Oh, that's great.
Recruiting marketers.
Yeah, well, it's that whole thing, isn't it? It's kind of like, I think, if we find something we like, it's quite instinctive to share it, so please do.
Yeah, great. So I think we're at the sort of end of the allocated time. Does anyone have a
Yeah, we
another
can do any
burning
other
question?
question.
Yeah.
So Ruby, when I I just keep thinking, is that power punk thing, but Green Day? That's what I was hearing. What did you hear?
There's definitely electric. Mikali's read it. So
Yeah.
I mean, she's definitely plugged in, and I think what you hear is what you hear.
All right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just the same way I sort of gender reversal in my that kind of. I think that's what she's saying.
Yeah.
I didn't intend it, but it's really cool that it has this subconscious depth.
No, I mean so I mean it's described as electro punk, which is that kind of quite high energy, big guitars, lots of bass, but with electronica in there as well. So Sam, the lovely guy in her band, is has a laptop and does cool beats that he reads into it as well.
Kia ora, Kat. I'm halfway through, but one thing that jumped out at me was a bit when you said when things are in crisis state, like climate change, etc., the women get it, and that just really impacted on me, because just reading about the woman who was the stripper, she's getting it, Clinton, Trump, getting it, the bikini, getting it, and it really impacted me. And I know I've got the rest of the book to read, but does Ruby get it? But kia ora, I think that's just such an important thing. Thank you for putting that out.
Yeah, thank you for that. And sadly, I mean, because I was making kind of final edits in January, in feedback to Fiona Stevenson and Janine, who both helped in that editing process in different stages. So as they know, there were sort of some changes happening up to that point. But but most of it was written in the previous few years, and sadly, since it has been published, that pressure and that tension has only got worse. So it feels really uncomfortably present. And that kind of idea that you write something and then you start to see it reflected back more in the world is really interesting. The weirdest one I had with it was, because it's set in Leeds, and I wrote about a flood as a climate event. So I wrote it with Ruby in 2021, thinking back a previous couple of years to when this flood had happened. So from today it would still be in the future. And on Boxing Day, some of you might have been watching the news, Boxing Day just gone, Leeds really flooded, like the real city of Leeds flooded. Now I'd written what I'd written based on a historical flood like quite a long time ago, so I'd drawn on those historical late 1900s, I'd drawn on those historical references to write of what a modern flood would be. And other cities in the north have flooded, so I drew on them. Then it did flood for real, and I had to kind of go back to that paragraph and kind of look at it and go, what do I need to change? And actually I needed to move the flood by a block and lock the date as being a real date, and I could make it a real historical flood rather than a fictional future flood. So that was kind of uncanny, and it wasn't that I have some strange prescient detail. We know this stuff is happening. The climate forecasts change forecasts are happening. It was just that particular one happened sooner rather than later, as more of them are doing. And interestingly, as a result, Leeds, one of the Leeds Council museums is putting together a community museum exhibition based on people's experience of the flood, which is going to go up in November in Leeds, and they're actually going to feature Ruby in the Blue Sky and that anecdote about the fictional flood becoming a real flood, because they think it's a really nice angle. So she's going to be in a museum.
I just noticed one New Zealandism in it, but I'm sure there were more. Can you talk about that?
Oh, there's a reference.
Yeah. Was there much of your experience here that you took?
So I think a lot. Yeah, I mean, there is a sort of a New Zealand reference in it, which was just for us. Really.
Yeah.
I think what, like I sort of said in the piece in the Fringe, that a lot of my life in the last 20 years has been about how do we make change. How do we communicate effectively so that we get cut through with something, and how do we make change in our Green Party volunteering, or in the work that we do together. How do we sum up an amazing, incredible, complicated business in a snappy soundbite that we'll get through? How do we run an election campaign that will resonate with people? So a lot of that experience that has been formed in Aotearoa is woven into some of the ideas in the book about power and communication. I think for sure. Yeah, so probably more like that, more than specific stuff. Otherwise, I'm indulging my Yorkshire roots in terms of all the plants and the nature and stuff. So yeah, it's back up there for it.
That international thing does bring me back to mind that it's kind of a thing that New Zealand novels are overall quite depressing. And so you've managed to set this in Britain, so it's not particularly a New Zealand novel, and yet you're pulling on New Zealand things, so there is that tension as well between the local and the international. So that's an interesting thing, because you've probably done some kind of a leapfrog into a global market rather than a local market.
Yeah, might have done. I mean, it's early to say. It's early to say yet. Our world is so interconnected, and it was really, really interesting, this process of first sort of unleashing the book up in Leeds, and yet my whānau down here were following the whole process really closely, and we did, I did a live video feed on Twitter that night, and had one of my friends who was a New Zealand friend but was up in the UK at the time there, so that kind of connectedness is, I think, quite a present reality, and so there's definitely connections in the book between our experience of places and what we're simultaneously experiencing around the world. I mean, stuff travels so fast, doesn't it? So even 10 years ago, the horrible treatment of that, of a lot of those women on the beaches with the bikinis would have maybe filtered out slowly, but now we're aware of it globally, and it becomes straight away within hours becomes part of our conversations internationally. So that there's a big part of that speed and grassroots enabled communication is definitely something that's really around in here.
So I think we should
everybody.
probably allow mingling and buying and signing of books. I believe Carol has the books for sale.
Yeah, I just want to acknowledge the amazing Carol Bow from the Women's Bookshop, who has come along to support us tonight and sell the books, and we'll have some in stock in the bookshop too, but it's selling them here. And I'll sign it. Also, as well as Ruby in the Blue Sky, there are copies of Niki Harre's amazing non-fiction books which explain similar things from a non-fiction perspective, actually.
But save your money for Kath's book, because mine can be downloaded for free, so there's also if you've got money left over, feel free to buy mine. The night is about Kath, and yes, so linger a little bit. I believe maybe a little tiny bit. I think we're finishing at 7:30, and then go home and take
Thanks everybody. Thank you for coming, and thank you Niki for being amazing. She has got a great talent as an interviewer, hasn't she?